Hey, Voodoo Power listeners. Before we start the show, let me tell you about Strength Coach Pro. Strength Coach Pro is the ultimate coaching companion for passionate strength coaches. Strength Coach Pro is a powerful platform allowing coaches to sequence programs for an entire year, ensuring athletes stay on track. It features a simple drag and drop design for program building. It's easy and efficient, allowing for customized workouts. Another great feature of Strength Coach Pro is the real-time leaderboard feedback. Athletes love competition, creating a fun, engaged, and motivated environment where they can thrive. Strength Coach Pro is trusted by coaches at all levels, from professional to D1, high school, and professional trainers looking for an easy way to streamline programming needs. Whether working with 10 clients or 1,000 athletes, there are no limits to the support of this program. In addition, there's a 14-day trial for coaches where they can explore the platform for themselves. At just $50 a month or $500 a year, the value is unbeatable. Please don't miss your opportunity. Coaches can reach out to Strength Coach Pro for a demo today. Let them work to save you time and elevate your coaching. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Steve Canter. Coach Canter is the owner of South County Youth Performance in Wakefield, Rhode Island. Canter's training facility is a successful passion project that allows for young people to train with or without their parents or guardians. Before SC Youth Performance, Coach Canter taught weight training and PE as the assistant strength at Goose Creek High School in Charleston, South Carolina. Canter grew up in Virginia Beach, where he was an assistant sport and strength coach at Landstown High School prior to Goose Creek. At Landstown, he coached and helped develop Percy Harvin, Damon McDaniel, and several other Division I football players. Canter became the head football coach at Landstown in the spring of 2006. Coach Canter spent a number of years in college football as a player and a coach. He played collegiately at Virginia Tech for legendary Hall of Fame football coach Frank Beamer and moved into a strength conditioning graduate assistant position immediately after graduation. He also worked under master strength coach and industry legend Mike Gentry, assisting with both the Olympic sports and the football team within the weight room environment. Virginia Tech won the ACC Football Championship that fall in 2004 and played Auburn in the Nokia Sugar Bowl following the regular season. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Appreciate you having me, man. I'm excited to be here, Coach. I love what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. I summarized your bio. It's a very good bio, so I probably missed some stuff, but the Virginia Tech stuff's really cool. I'm a big Nebraska fan, and about that 2004 time, Nebraska started slipping there a little bit, and I remember playing Virginia Tech and just getting the pants knocked off of them. So that time in Virginia Tech history was a very exciting time to be there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had some really, really good football teams. And then I actually when I went back to be a grad assistant, we played Nebraska in 2009. They had played them at your place in 08 at Nebraska. And then they came into our place in 09. So that was cool. I grew up, just knowing so much about Husker power in Nebraska that it really was kind of surreal to be coaching against that program. Especially being a Virginia school. I grew up in Virginia Beach. So, Nebraska feels like an international trip, to go out there. So it was very cool.
Now, would you have been there in the Vic era?
Yes. Yep. I overlapped with the Vics. And we did. We had some really explosive football players. We got D'Angelo Hall's a future Hall of Famer from the NFL as well. And just a lot of really, really good people, but also football players and Coach Beamer and that staff that was all there for a really long time. Coach Bud Foster, defensive coordinator, they did a really nice job developing football players. A lot of guys that no one else really wanted, and they came in, and that's where I think most people credit Coach Mike Gentry in the weight room. I think all of us, obviously, anybody listening to this podcast is a big believer in strength and conditioning. It makes a difference. There's some development that really happens in that weight room down there. And Virginia Tech really is a testament to that.
From there, you ended up at Rhode Island as a quarterback coach, which I didn't get on the bio, but I know me and you had talked about that some. How did that come about?
Yeah, once I left Virginia Tech, went down to Norfolk State University. We won a conference championship in the MEAC. Michael Vick's actually the new head football coach at Norfolk State. So I was there, won the only MEAC championship. I was the quarterback's coach, and Chris Wally, who played for me, he was player of the year in the conference in 2011. We played in the playoffs, And then I had an opportunity to replace Liam Cohen, who is now the new head football coach at the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was the quarterbacks coach at Rhode Island at the time. And I ended up having a connection here in Rhode Island. And I wanted to get in the CAA. You know, I was in Virginia where William & Mary, Richmond, JMU at the time was in the league. I was super familiar with Delaware, you know, and Old Dominion at that time, which is in Norfolk. They were in the CAA as well. So I just envisioned if you're going to be an FCS coach, that was the premier league at the time to be in. With Villanova had just won a national championship as well. Obviously, if you talk about the North Dakota states and South Dakota states and what have you, those are premier programs as well. But that's CAA on the East Coast for sure. And so I said, you know what, if I go to Rhode Island, now I'm in the league, now I'm kind of intermingling with those coaches, and now maybe there's a shot to get back down to Virginia. And you know what, I'm still in Rhode Island. So, 14 years later or 10 years later, I'm still here. A great place to be. Enjoyed my time as a coach here, and then now just have turned it into a great place to raise a family and then do some strength and conditioning stuff on the side here, back into coaching, youth football, back into coaching, strength and conditioning. So you can't escape it when it's in your DNA.
Well, that would lead me to what you're doing now. I think after I started following you and we got to know each other, you do something very similar to what we do here, but it is a little different. So your gym has a lot of younger population in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, so you go from coaching college quarterbacks to second graders. Mm-hmm. Making that switch, flipping the switch to get down there and help those athletes or future athletes. How big of a change in thought process was that?
Very different. You know, I think anybody that's listening that's a parent as well, and when you're a coach, you probably, you know, I have two boys. So growing up in my house, I'm a single dad, and so it's a locker room here, you know, like, so you imagine my kids, you know, at age 3, 4, or 5, these guys were running, you know, 5Ks at the time, and they're passionate about doing it. I lead by example, physically, but there is a different mindset. There's a little more fun that you have to kind of inject in there. You got to create buy-in. And I think we've done that. And obviously we've done it with a broader population. We just opened our doors in September of the previous year, so 2024. So we haven't been open very long. We have about 65 kids in our program. I'm very fortunate to have some really good coaches that are also the parents of young children. And so we have this tight-knit community in South County, Rhode Island, of people that there's a lot of soccer players, there's a lot of lacrosse, there's a lot of baseball, and they want to give their kids opportunities to do something physically. And there's also, it's a fit community. It's a beach town. So when you go to the beach in the summertime, there's a lot of fit folks. So they have kids, they want their children to have a love for fitness as well. And we've just given them a chance to do it. We open the doors, and we allow ages 6 and up in our facility. And most of the time that is in a class environment. So they come and they're taught by an instructor. We do have a lot of female only classes, very passionate about empowering female youth and getting them confident and developing leadership and all those things. And but again, very blessed to have a lot of really good coaches that have poured their time and energy into not only their kids, but these collective groups of children.
I've watched some of your videos. What do you kind of lean towards on younger kids like that? Are you just letting them kind of jump, move, explore, or are you hitting a program like a 1x20? What dictates what they're doing and how you get them going in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question, Coach. So, you know, some of our younger population, a lot of it is, oh, okay, there's some structure there. And then there's a lot of relay races and a lot of things that we pepper in a lot more fun at that age. It's part of the reason I don't coach it, because I'm not a lot of fun. That's part of the reason I've got my kids. My youngest is 9 years old. He does participate in the elementary groups, male only group as well. And then he also works out with what we call our Delta Force group. And that's more middle school age. I have an older son who's 13. So a lot of his peers are really how this whole thing started. And then we actually have some high school guys. A good friend of mine, Ben, both of his kids train with us, and we've started to now add some older kids who are just trying to turn the dial up. So for my older groups, we're using a lot of triphasic, and we're trying to do as much as we can, still stick with the foundation and the fundamentals, right? Not get crazy. We have enough equipment in there to keep people interested and to really do all the things that we want to be able to do. But with that younger population, it's moving, it's teaching them how to jump, specifically how to land, and then how to run fast. We work some form, but also we have a chance to time them and have them competing against each other and doing all those things that creates that competitive environment. But also there is a layer of fun there.
I've saw that you added in a space to sprint inside there. You put some turf in, and I saw you run some timers the other day with kids, and they were pulling chains, they were pushing sleds. On youth like that, with the timers, with the chains, I have a system of how I do it, but I was really curious, how do you decide how much is enough resistance, and moving forward, how do you adjust that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Not a lot of science behind the chains for us, only because we have some younger kids, and I do have to kind of remind my coaches, like, hey man, like 2 of those chains is 40 pounds and that kid is 72 pounds, right? Like, so we have the ability to take a chain off and use 20 pounds. And then we have the ability with the sled, obviously, to push the sled, which is a 70-pound sled on that turf. It glides really easily. And then we have a couple other sleds that are a little less, a little lighter. We have a 0 sled and some other ones that are a little lighter, but we really try to get, even for the older kids, 25 to 30% of their body weight, not to go so heavy with the resisted sprints that we're going to sacrifice for them. And again, I know there's a fine line there, and there's some ways that I would love to know how you calculate that, and I'm sure there's some great resources out there that we can look into as well.
I stole mine, I'm not going to lie, from Sammy Seabach and Brandon Bird. They both helped me figure out what I wanted to do, and then talking to Villani, he got into it a little bit, so I've adjusted mine through that, and I've been super happy with the results I see. But we have it set up very, very similar to how you do, so that's why I had some questions on it. Watching you do that, I'm like, okay, he's kind of doing the same thing I am there, so I'll pick his brain a little bit. The other thing, in the young populations like that, I was curious, and in the bio we mention it, young people can train with or without their parents. Some kids are really good without their parents, and some kids have to have their parents. How have you seen that work? Has it been pretty beneficial if a parent wants to work out, or do you get in this helicopter deal where you can't really do what you want to do because the parents just won't let them go? What have you seen that keeps it open like that for you?
Combination of both, right? I'm a big believer in turn your kids loose. Let them find out how to struggle. Let them lose. You can't clear the runway for them. Some parents struggle with that. We set expectations. When a parent signs up, I let them know, listen, they're going to be safe. We're going to take care of them. We will call you if anything happens, but we also are going to challenge them. We are going to push them and help them learn to strain a little. And this will be the best experience that they have in regards to learning how to deal with some adversity and challenge. And most parents get out of the way. Some parents want to be part of the consistent. Our model is we have consistent morning groups. So once you join that group, we're expecting you to be there 2 mornings a week. Obviously, things come up in life, but at the end of the day, like if the attendance continues to fall off, I just ask you, I'm probably going to remove you from the group, and I'll take in another kid, because we're limited like anybody else, coach. We've got 1,100 square feet. So, we're looking at 12 kids total in there at a time. And there's our groups in the morning, believe it or not, there's a lot of kids that want to work out in the mornings before school, which is awesome. And, but we set expectations. Hey, there's some parents that can come during those consistent morning groups. And then we also have a model where we say, okay, any open gym time, the parent is actually a part of the membership as well. You can come solo if you would like to, or you could bring little Johnny and y'all get an extra workout in and you do something together. We're just trying to promote the parent guardian fitness with their child because it's been so beneficial for me. I ran a 10-mile race with my son last summer. It was a 10-mile race that he had been thinking about for a long time. He and I just did mile repeats together on Sunday. And it's a fun experience for me. And I wanted to share that with other parents and a lot of other people. Maybe they envisioned it and they dreamt it, but they never could execute on it. And we just provided an opportunity for them to do it. I just pay all the rent, man. I pay the bills. I want parents to come in. I tell everybody, this is your gym too. Take care of it. Turn the lights out when you leave. But at the end of the day, like, this is your facility as well.
I started with an older population, juniors, seniors in high school, and just being around them, that model never worked for me because those kids are pretty like, what are they doing here? So I didn't know if you ran into that. You get a couple kids that are pretty comfortable without their parents being there, and then they're like, well, what's Johnny's mom doing here? Do you ever run into any friction that way?
We do occasionally. I get a little bit of grumbling about maybe a mom being there or something like that. And there is a time where, again, men are different in the weight room than females. I'm sorry. It's the truth. And we want to be dudes. And when you've got a bunch of middle school guys and a couple high school guys, it's an all male environment. It's at the end of the day, like, that's kind of what we want. And so there's a time and a place. Like I run a co-ed kind of adult group on Sunday mornings, Tuesday mornings, and I love some of the females that are in there are some of my best friends. They're incredible. They're tough, and I love having them there. But there is a time and a place where young men want to be in there without their parent, specifically maybe a mom, and so we try to facilitate that and create that environment for them for sure. The younger population, they're not there yet. They don't really feel that way. Like those coaches, whether they're moms or dads, they know how to really create the buy-in and build the culture as well. So we haven't really run into that with the younger population. But the older, to your point, Coach, at some point they're like, all right, man, can we do this without adults?
I'm starting to pull in a younger population, so now I'm having to change the way I view training because what my older kids are doing, they're getting ready to go to college or whatever the case may be, is not beneficial for some of the younger. So picking your brain on bringing in the younger athletes and starting to work with them is definitely going to help me in the long run because you have to change the way you think about things and the way you coach things. I guess your coaching experience is going to have to be pretty broad if 1 minute you're working with a 6-year-old and then the next minute you're working with an 18-year-old that's getting ready to go to college.
Absolutely. Yeah, we try to break up our classes based on age group. And again, we do some female-only classes, not because we can't teach the same thing to males and females. It's really more so I think most of us would be able to speak to the distractions that can happen when you have two different genders in there. And for young elementary girls, especially 5th grade, before they're going to jump to middle school, we want to just eliminate that distraction of having boys in there where they care about what a boy thinks they're doing and they can just focus on the technique, the skill, the fun of fitness. But yeah, I talk to my coaches all the time about we have to be able to be prepared to scale. You have to, because you and I both know, even in the broader, like older populations, performance level and ability can be drastically different, even if they're the same age, depending on the training years and just genetics, all those things, some things that kids can't control. So being able to have band assisted setups and just understanding, okay, this kid's not ready to do this particular workout based on this advanced level of movement, I have to have an alternative for them. So it does take some preparation. It takes some on the fly coaching to be able to adjust and have an alternative. But most of us have done that because of injuries for a long time. we've got a couple belt squat setups. We've got a lot of different things that we can take the barbell completely out of the equation or modify based on injuries. So I actually, nothing gets me a little more fired up than when someone says, "Oh, I can't come, I sprained my ankle." I'm like, dude, you know how many things I could do with you that will actually help you make progress that has nothing to do with your ankle. So I always tell the parents, hey, send them anyway. We've got something programmed for them. So really, to your point, being able to adapt on the fly or in preparation for a class where we know there's going to be a couple different age groups or ability levels is critical with all populations. But definitely when you start bringing in 6-year-olds and they're working out with 9-year-olds, it can be drastically different.
That's what I noticed when I had kids, was the difference in a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old is light years.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference in a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old isn't that big of a difference. It seems like as you grow up, that gap closes. But when you're young like that, 1 year is just a huge amount of maturity.
Yeah, I'm going through that with my oldest son now. He's 13. Some of his peers, some of the kids that have been training with us for a number of years now as well, they're just hitting puberty before him. I was a little bit of a late bloomer prior to going on and playing college football. And I always just tell him, I'm like, you got to trust the process, man. One, you can't control it. Are you eating enough? Are you training? You're building the discipline and the foundation that you're going to use no matter what when you leave here. But hey, God's in control of that, my brother. Like you're not going to be able to control when that testosterone starts really pumping through you. So, I'm dealing with that a little bit and having to be the psychologist and the sports, specific. So we're dealing with it at the household.
I can remember when it really hit me. My daughter, she played up in softball, so I think she was 10, and she was playing on a 12U team. So the girls on the team were getting ready to move up. They were getting ready to go into 14. So she was very young. And we're at the field, and it was at the coach's house, and we're in the backyard, and she's looking at the playhouse. What do you think, Dad? That's a pretty nice playhouse. And while she's explaining that to me, all the other girls are over on the trampoline talking about boys and school. And it hit me then that, holy cow, what have I done to you, kid? I thrust you into a world that you probably weren't ready to be in.
Yeah, that maturity level and some of the things you're being exposed to, just even one age group up or what have you, it can be completely different. That is for sure.
Now, I don't want to gloss over the female athletes because that's something that we started taking on, and I ran into very similar situation as you. Females started asking us about coming to the gym. Well, then, hey, these are the nights we work out. Well, I got a few in here, and they just didn't come back. The environment was too masculine, let's say. They didn't want to be around those high school boys. We had to make the off nights the female nights, and we've got a lot better participation since then. So how did you come to the realization to make female-only classes or make a designated time just to get females in?
It was, I just pay attention. I think having enough female moms, like enough moms that are friends of mine that I've talked to about their kids, they have sons and daughters. They have maybe just sons or what have you, or again, just daughters, just understanding that the psychology that is happening, the maturity that's happening, just trying to stay in tune with this development. Again, I'm talking about even the middle school age where my oldest is challenged by the females at his age are they're much more developed than him, not only kind of maturity wise, but even academically and athletically. So I was just really in tune to that. And then talking to those moms, I was like, hey, listen, would this be of benefit? Because I also worked out in a group fitness gym for years and taught there as well as adults. And I remember just the difference in how the class would be if it was predominantly male versus predominantly female, and how the genders kind of mix with working out and what some care about. So I don't know. I'm certainly not brilliant by any means, but I did think, you know what, if we can make a female only class and group appealing, I think we'll have better participation in that. And then our ultimate goal is to have the biggest participation for youth athletes, or youth in general, whether they call themselves athletes or not. I want fitness, health, wellness. If that's our goal, then let's create the opportunity for folks to have some ownership of their class, and they love it. These girls love it. So we have a female-only morning group. It's elementary aged on Monday and Thursday mornings, from 7 to 8 a.m., and then they're able to get together, go have a good time at the local Starbucks right before they go to school. And then we also have 2 female-only classes back-to-back on Wednesday afternoons. And so we do have some moms and daughters that come and train together in those classes. So I just smile big every time I see the videos and the pictures get posted of those classes. It just makes me smile.
My adult life, I've lived in a house with women. I have 2 daughters and a wife, and it's amazing how much the stuff eludes me until one of them pulls me to the side and says, "Hey, look, that shirt you made, that's for a boy. You need to think about, what are you going to do for a girl? It can be exactly the same, but make it for a girl." We have a Ronnie Coleman shirt. Once you make 2 cycles here, you get this shirt. Everybody wants to be a bodybuilder, but nobody wants to lift big weight. Well, it always had a male silhouette on it. Well, now we have a bunch of females. Now you're giving the females a shirt with a male bodybuilder on it. And, they pointed that out to me the other day. Like, maybe that's not inclusive enough. Mm-hmm. So they went and got a silhouette of a female. So now we're making some changes. But I'm glad you noticed it, because if it was up to me, I would never figure it out.
Yeah. Again, I credit the female coaches that we have, that are very good friends of mine, that we keep the conversation going, and I've always gotten really good ideas from them, and I wanted it to be appealing for them and their daughters. So that was really a big driver, and we've been very, very happy with the participation.
I've watched sports, played sports, participated. I wasn't an exceptional athlete. I did okay, but I have a lot of guys on here like you that played college football, played at a higher level. I don't totally understand what it takes to get there, because I didn't do it. But the one thing I noticed is sometimes the guys that played at the higher level really struggle coming back and coaching, because they always had that ability in their back pocket. You were a gifted athlete. How did you remove yourself from the equation so that you could go coach a younger athlete that may not have an athletic bone in their body? You're having to learn how to coach them. How were you able to separate that?
Yeah, I mean, most of my buddies would bust my chops and say gifted athlete and Steve Canter are never using the same sentence anyway. So I was an overachiever. I fell in love with strength and conditioning as a high school athlete. My strength coach, John Hale, one of my best friends, I still talk to him once a week. We still talk about strength and conditioning, health and wellness, everything, and he introduced me to Westside Barbell. He introduced me to Husker Power, all those things back in the 90s and early 2000s. But, I fell in love with strength and conditioning because I was always looking for an edge. I was like, how can I get bigger, faster, stronger? I was a hard gainer. I was a late bloomer. And so I always, and most people that know me, I kind of have always been a coach. I was like the team captain. I was the Paul Frederick Cobb Award winner at Virginia Tech, which is the most team-spirited and enthusiastic player. So I always was kind of a player coach as an athlete anyway. So some of it just came very natural to me. I also can share stories not only with my children, but the kids that we're training that, hey, listen, man, I was a late bloomer. I was a hard gainer, but look what I was able to do. I was able to go and compete with some of the best players in the country in college football because of consistency. I continued to show up, and that's what we're modeling, and that's what we're really preaching. It's not, hey, we're going to make you the strongest guy. We're going to make you the fastest. Again, some of those things I can't control because I don't control your genetics. Your 2 parents probably should not have procreated together. I apologize. Sorry, man. But at the same time, we just preach consistency and then intentional effort. It's understanding that we don't go through the motions, and that doesn't happen. Definitely doesn't happen in my groups. I'm a grumpy guy at 6 a.m. and we have a really good time in there. It's intense, but it's also very uplifting and encouraging. And we've got a big sign up there that says iron sharpens iron, because we truly believe that.
And saying that, you're getting them and we keep going back to this, you're getting very young. So through that, you're able to have some of these kids a very long time, creating a process that they can grow through and see the advancement. How long has that taken to kind of build in what you want to see from the first day to the day they walk out the door and they go on and pursue whatever it is they're going to pursue?
Yeah, I think it's evolving. Like when we started this, we started at a local YMCA, and I was a member, and so were two other families. And I started training my two kids by myself. And then my good friend Thomas Domack, he's like, "Hey man, can I bring my boys?" And his oldest is the exact same age as my oldest. They're born on the same day, coincidentally. And then he has another son who's 2 years older than my youngest. And so we started building that group, and then we started adding a couple kids here and there. And then finally we ended up growing into our own space or a different space. But I was like, you know what? Let's test. Let's establish this foundation of the movements, and all of those continued to evolve. At that time, I was just training myself, and then now I'm training these kids, and then now I'm reading books and looking at videos all the time, and I'm constantly that's what I spend probably 8 hours a week doing now. And I'm thinking, man, this evolution of what am I expecting at the end? And I don't know if I have a great answer, because I think these goals of the kids change. But at the end of the day, like, we want to make them, I always say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Like I tell other adults in my life, I say, hey, listen, because I've run ultra marathons, I've run marathons, I've run half marathons. Like, I'm 193 pounds. I'm not really built like a runner, but I always say I want to be able to walk out of my door and and be able to run a half marathon at any given time in my life. And so my goal for these kids is just like, are you ready for anything? If you decide to wrestle this off season, are you prepared? Do you have grip strength? Is your neck ready for that type of contact? Are you aggressive? Some of those things we may or may not be able to control in the gym environment, but we definitely can put them in a situation to compete in the gym environment. And then we have some guys that are gifted runners. My son, a couple of the other kids that we've been training for a while, they're placing very high in cross country and track. So we've really geared towards making people successful runners, because again, I think most coaches would agree, but I've said this to my kids forever: if you can run, every coach will find a place for you. And that's kind of the basis of what we do, is like, let's just get fast, man, and then be able to run for a while. We're lacrosse players, we're cross country runners, we're track runners, and we play football. I mean, we do a little bit of everything, but don't gas out. And so that's kind of a long-winded answer, Coach, to say I'm not 100% sure, man. Like, I want kids to be able to be strong at the most basic level of being able to move your own body weight. Like, when you can't do a pull-up, it's pretty cool when you do your first pull-up. And we've seen a lot of kids do their first pull-up, and adults, and it's pretty awesome. There's a lot of woohoos and smiles, when people are doing that. So I just want to see progression, and whatever that ends up looking like at the tail end, I think we'll be happy with it.
And if your facility is anything like mine, I've noticed the ebbs and flows of what athletes are in there. So while you have, runners now, in 5 years, it could be all wrestlers, which they still need that work capacity and be able to run. Don't get me wrong, but it's weird to watch the mindset shift with the athletes that come in. And well, then now your model gets tweaked a little bit more. So yes, it's probably ever evolving.
Absolutely. Yeah, I try not to be all over the place like new shiny object guy, because there's so much content. I listen to a handful of your episodes, and all of a sudden these guys are saying things that are blowing my mind, and I'm like, man, I really like to implement that, or I'd like to try that. And I try to pump the brakes, be a little careful. Most of the things I think can be easily added. There's no I haven't really run across so many things that are just way off base of what we're already doing, right? But I do try to say, all right, this is who we are, what we do. This is the equipment that we have for a reason. But I do like these new ideas and to pepper those in. But I think you just made a great point of Like our population of athletes here can be completely different in the next 3 years and really focusing on something different. So I love to just listen to a lot of these different coaches, watch a lot of the different resources. And so I'm prepared to train combat sport athletes and wrestlers, and I'm prepared to take a track athlete and help them just as well.
It becomes so much bigger than strength and conditioning very quickly because you have to understand the sport demands. So now you have to listen to some of these other coaches that have more experience, and man, they've helped me so much. But yeah, to be prepared for the next kid that comes in and says, I want to do this. Oh crap, I don't know anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're kind of like you said a minute ago, if you're ready, you don't have to get ready. Now you kind of alluded to it in what we were just talking about right there, but supporting youth athletes to excel, we all get that. But what does excel look like to you?
Yeah, I think excel, and again, taking it from a parent's perspective, and I'm really just putting myself in the shoes of these other parents who have entrusted myself and other coaches to train their children for a couple hours a week, spend a lot of time with them. A lot of times, some of our coaches, these parents, a lot of them are the other moms. They're also driving all these kids to school. It's a big family group, and so they spend a lot of time around our children, and it's awesome, because again, excelling means, what's your attitude like? What kind of teammate are you? What kind of leader are you in the classroom? How you do anything is how you do everything. We want to make sure that when you come in, I'm on a big kick coach right now. I tell my kids, and I've said this in front of our group multiple times, the question you should be asking every day is, hey coach, how can I help? Because when you walk in that weight room in the morning at 5:55, we're not completely set up just yet. I might still be writing something on the board, or I might still be setting up a few things. And I want to hear, hey coach, or hey dad, because from my two knuckleheads, how can I help? And that to me goes a long way, right? Like I want people to be I want these kids to learn that you take initiative, man. Nobody's coming to save you. You need to be the captain of your own ship. And that's excelling to me is like, are we building better kids, better teammates who are going to be better people and great employees? Like all of those things. I just envision it as a dad of this group, not just a gym owner or what have you, because again, I could actually afford to have this gym without having another member in there other than my own children. But what fun would that be? So this has just been such a great experience for me. And I love getting feedback from the parents about their kids saying their behavioral issues have gone away. Because again, they come 2 mornings a week and they're getting after it for an hour. They don't go to school all hyped up and rambunctious. They're ready to learn a little more so. I've heard they have their best grades that they've had. We've been training some of these kids in the mornings for 3 years. So they've excelled. And then also some of them were great kids and great leaders and have great parents already, but giving us an opportunity to also just pour into them a little bit. Such a blessing.
I had heard you in a podcast and you were talking about this, and I think this is very interesting, and maybe we don't put enough stock in it, but learning to ask young athletes the right questions. They're not at the level we're at. They're at their own level. So meeting the kid, no matter what age they are, at their level and asking them the questions that get and elicit a thought from them, and then processing that to create a better athlete. How are you able to do that?
I'd like to think that because I've coached for a long time and I have dealt with a lot of different age groups. Like I just got done coaching youth football last year, eighth grade level. I have a 7th grader. I have a 3rd grader. I speak elementaryese or whatever. Like, I don't know. I think, understanding that they're not all going to understand some of the technical talk. Some of it's going to be over their head. Some of it's over the coach's heads when I talk. I mean, I may be repeating some stuff. Who knows if I'm saying it right anyway, but I may be repeating some things that I've learned, and they're saying I don't really have that background, that foundational knowledge. So understanding that you just got to kind of rewind and say, all right, let's meet this child on their level or the coach on their level of where do I think their base knowledge is, and kind of continue to tweak it and go from there to be able to say, okay, let's talk about how does this movement make your body feel? Where do you feel like it's working? Where do you feel like it's hard? All of those things, and try to talk through that, because that mind muscle connection is probably underrated. Like, some folks don't think that way. So it's one of the reasons we do a good amount of isometrics and eccentrics and a lot of things to create that mind and muscle connection, and really hoping to trigger what we need to trigger.
Watching athletes, that's amazing. You can get one athlete in the gym, show them a couple, let's say it's a deadlift or whatever the case may be. We'll stick with the deadlift. Well, they'll go right to the wrestling mat and you'll see that deadlift come through in their throw. But then you have another athlete that will never associate that pull with a throw and never get the benefit. So yes, learning to talk through that so that hopefully they can associate that and take the weight room to their sport. That's a huge benefit for the ones without the body awareness.
Yeah, I love explaining when we have time, and we create time, and I do it mid-workout. I do it when I explain before. And then I also talk to the parent. Again, I have a couple dads who train with us and are teaching as well. So they're able to, emphasize some of these things at home as well. But I love the idea. Anybody that's curious wants to know why they're doing something anyway. What's the why behind it? Why do we where is the force coming from? How is it going to translate? So to your point, coach, how am I going to take that deadlift I just did, and why does it help my wrestling? So I want to talk through those things as much as I can. And then you'll see a movement and you'll say, I'd like to be doing that movement. And then you go, I don't really know how that would be applicable. So I won't implement it until I know how it's applicable, because I want to be able to tell the kid and our groups how this movement is really applicable to what they're going to do.
They understand really quickly if you're selling them a load of goods.
I think so too. I know my youngest son will call me out. So
yeah. And like we were talking about there, there's some of those athletes that are going to question everything you write on the board, and you have to be able to handle that. But then when they get through it all and you've answered their questions appropriately, they may turn out to be your best athlete. They were just a little bit of a challenge in the beginning. I've also heard you speak to this, and I think this probably carries more weight than a lot of things I've heard in a long time. But the more you know, the greater responsibility you have as a coach. Establishing that this knowledge isn't for any reason, and the more you do understand, you have a responsibility to that athlete to do everything in your power to get your knowledge into them. When did that start becoming a focal point for you?
I think, again, coaches, guys that are listening to this, that are listening to a lot of your episodes, it's in our DNA to be a coach, to be a servant leader, to be folks that have sacrificed time, energy, money of their own to be a coach. And I don't think it's an accident. I really don't. And again, I think most of us, or at least a lot of us that grew up in this country and played athletics, we all envisioned going to the highest level. We all envisioned, these long careers and all of those things. And then all of a sudden our careers take a different path, and we find ourselves with groups of young people in our gyms or on our sports fields that are thirsty for knowledge, for improvement. We ask them to be committed and be hungry, and they show us. And I think there's a responsibility to say, you know what? I'm not going through the motions here. Like, I don't know everything for sure. And I'm quick to tell everyone that, I don't have all the answers by any means, but I am curious enough, and I'm also intelligent enough to know where to go to find them. And much to your point earlier, coach, like, you knew who to reach out to, or you found a resource and you say, I'm going to follow up with that person until I spend 10 minutes with them and get an explanation on something that can help acceleration for a couple of folks that in my groups that are challenged with it. So I always just felt like if you're going to coach and people are committing their time to you, and in our case, paying a membership to come to a gym, I owe them. I do. And I owe them the best product I can provide. And it's something I take to heart and I take very serious. And I think most coaches do. I think there's a lot of really good coaches out there. And I think when you see bad coaches, it's usually you see it and it gets kind of exasperated. So it feels like it's way more bad coaches than good ones. But I do in my heart think that there's a lot of really, really good coaches out there at both at the sports level, strength and conditioning level, all of those things. So I do think a lot of folks are taking that responsibility and saying, I've got this knowledge. I want to be able to really add value to the life of this young athlete who has committed their time and energy. And it's really rewarding to see when they do accomplish something, even if it's a small step. But when you see that accomplishment and you see that big smile on their face and they can't wait to talk about it, man, that's really, really rewarding.
This is one, following your Instagram and all the things you do. You guys get out there and you live life. You run a lot, snowboard, you kind of live a guy's life. And you've moved around a lot. You've moved from Virginia Beach. You've done a lot of that. And kind of listening to you talk, it's easier said than done. So I know at times I've done some stuff that's scary, but I always end up back in my shell. How have you managed to not let fear dictate your direction in life and just keep pursuing something that's a challenge for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer. I'm a Jesus follower. I think I know where my bread is buttered. If people are familiar with that quote, but I just know what the outcome is. You can't get out of life alive. So my time here, I want to spend it doing the most fun, most epic things that I can do, and a lot of that I believe so much in challenge and adversity because I think you find out who you are. I've always felt that way. I was the guy that we did 6 a.m.s and it was the worst time for everybody, and I loved it. I thrive in that environment. Did it hurt? Of course it did. But those were the things when I was doing college football that is what I felt like separated me from other guys that I played with, but also the regular population. Like they weren't willing to do this. And that's just always been my mindset for a long time, is like, once I learned how to suffer, I learned how to suffer well, and pushing myself to do things that make me uncomfortable makes me feel alive. I just hiked Mount Washington in the winter here recently, early February, 50-mile-an-hour winds, coach, wind chills below zero. And there were some scary times up there. It can get crazy. Mount Washington is the deadliest mountain in the country and one in the world, just based on how the fronts are up there and the weather changes crazy. And man, I felt alive up there. It was really cool. And so I said, man, if I can emulate this as much as I want to feel this as often as I can. But again, I just, we all get embarrassed. I suffer through some of that just like anybody else. But I think more times than not, I'm willing to push it a little bit further and say, you know what? I'm not a big risk taker. I'm not going to endanger my life most of the time. But at the same time, I definitely want to be uncomfortable because I think I like what I see and what I learn about myself.
You only get one crack at it. And as you age, you're like, if I don't do this now, I may never do it.
Amen. Amen to that, Coach.
Well, talking about fear a little bit, this is the one thing I've noticed, and especially with younger populations, maybe more so than older populations, the fear of embarrassment. So the fear of failure in young athletes, that embarrassment or whatever, it almost seems like they always have an excuse in their pocket, ready to throw down. They didn't give you everything they had because they needed something to fall back on if failure struck. Getting kids to get past that and throw everything out there they have, let the excuses go, and it either worked or it didn't. In younger populations, how are you able to achieve that?
That's a great one, Coach, because I think we're battling that all the time. I see that even with these adult populations that I work out with on Sundays. Like I'll go back and forth with a couple of the folks that come and they'll say, I can never do that, or we'll do heavy sled pushes, and we do a competition every Sunday morning at the end of the workout because I just want to make adults compete again, man. Like, let's compete a little bit. It's fun, but at the same time, like, let's get a little competitive juice flowing again, man. Like, we're not dead yet, folks. Let's keep getting after it. But there's so much psychology behind all of that, specifically with the young athlete who they don't have the life experience you have yet. Everything that's happening to them right now is their Super Bowl. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened in their life because that's the perspective they have. And I've always felt like sharing personal stories with them about my own failure it carries a lot of weight because they see you as this adult. And most of the time they think you're a high functioning adult. Like most of us would like to think we are. I don't wear slippers all day and pajama pants or whatever, but they see you, and specifically me, Coach, like I'm pretty athletic still. I'm pretty lean. Like I look fit. So some of these kids in my gym think he's so strong. He's like Superman or whatever. And I'm like, guys, I was an average athlete, at this level. So I give them a lot of stories, personal, that are self-deprecating, I guess, and enough. Like I'm honest. I'm just honest. And I'm like, guys, man, like some days you're the dog, some days you're the fire hydrant, man. Like it's gonna happen. But the one thing we don't want to do is have a bunch of regrets because we were scared to take on this challenge, and you let the anxiety get the best of you and all those other things. So I really am passionate about that topic, Coach. I don't know if I have all the greatest answers, but I know that we've been able to push some guys and gals to do some things that they didn't think they could do. And boy, were they happy when they got done, regardless of whether they were successful or not, or maybe finished where they thought they would. They were very proud of themselves for competing. And that's what we're really trying to do, is get that across to them.
I have two questions that go along with that whole thing that you just went through. And one of them is, this could be a little controversial, I guess, depending on what you have going on in your life and how you feel about it. But do you feel like as a society now that we're starting to feed more into the anxiety issue? Like we're almost helping that turn into something bigger than what maybe the older population remembers when they were young?
100%. I think we're over, like, I've listened to probably both sides, and I certainly don't. I'm somewhere Switzerland, right? Like I'm in the middle somewhere. I think it depends on the person. But I know you can go to therapy probably a little too much. If you sit around and talk about your problems, they become problems. And that's the truth. And I'm sure there's some studies out there that will prove exactly what I just said. But I think we create we give ourselves these stories anyway. Like we create this narrative to ourselves before we do something. I can or I can't do it. Whether you think you can or you don't think you can, you're halfway there or whatever that quote is. But I think we've created societally here amongst some parents and people that helicopter over their children that don't want them to fail, that we've created this big, oh, don't touch that, or don't do this. And we've helicoptered over them way too long, Coach. And now everybody's scared to death to do something that might be uncomfortable.
And it seems like when I was younger, the introvert was a rarity. It's one thing to enjoy your own solitude, but it seems like the more we go on, the more introvert you see, as opposed to somebody that's out in society. And I don't know if it's technology. I don't know it. Maybe we just learn more about it. I don't know. I'm kind of like you. I'm Switzerland. I don't want to go and say something that's not right, but then I don't want a kid to be afraid of the world because it is so big and it is so awesome. trying to help them find that middle ground that they can live in.
Yeah, I think we've also been very fortunate, specifically in this country, Coach. The vast majority still live in homes where they don't share, these kids don't share rooms as often. Take a couple of generations before you and I, everybody was sharing rooms with their siblings. They had multiple siblings. Now you have a way more only children. So now, in terms of not to being used to being around folks as much and socializing and being a little more introverted, it's just easier to be that way. And we're definitely spending more time on our own messaging versus actually having that interaction. So yeah, I think it's a bad path to go on. But I also think there's pockets of people out there that are doing something about it, and they're discouraging the use of phones all the time. And, I think we just went through a little bit of a generation where we kind of learned, hey, maybe these social media platforms aren't really great for the well-being of these children. We started to learn, and I do see a shift. I know there's studies out there, or there's at least examples out there where folks are they're going back to flip phones and getting away from the iPhones and some of the social media apps and stuff like that. So I think it's encouraging. And again, that was one of the reasons we have such a passionate group of folks that care about youth health and wellness journeys. Like, if we have a couple pro athletes come out of this gym, wow, great. But if we have a bunch of people that love fitness and health and wellness, I'm going to be really, really happy in the next 10 years. That's what I really want to see. And that's obviously way more realistic than thinking you're going to create a bunch of pro athletes. But that is what I'm the most passionate about, because that's how I run my household and how I live with my kids. Is like, we don't have any tablets here. My oldest son has a phone. He hears about it all the time, buddy. I'm telling you. But it is good to be able to get a hold of him. But yeah, I just want to encourage folks to get out, man. Be social, challenge yourself. Don't be so anxious. It's only going to hurt just a little bit, and then you're going to get over it, and you're going to learn from it. You're going to grow, all those things.
We've been on here a while, and I'll start bringing this around. I still have quite a few questions, but the conversation's been great. But to hit the second question I had on that discussion was, the worst thing is to ever happen to you is the worst thing to ever happen to you. And as we mature, more bad things have happened to us. And so when you're working with youth and something bad happens, we act like it's no big deal, but to them, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. So being empathetic and understanding that they don't have the life experience we have, and helping them get through this worst thing that ever happened to them. How have you been able to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we touched a little bit on it, of that whole perspective of, that life experience, being able to share some of your failures with them, because most of the time, the worst thing that's happened to them, as you just mentioned, we kind of shrug it like, man, that really wasn't that big a deal, but it was to them. And I totally get it and understand. And I try to put myself back in those shoes, where when I was this awkward middle school kid who was a little overweight and wasn't a very good athlete, and I would have never dreamed of being able to go to like a rock climbing gym and be able to do it. I would never be able to pull my own body weight up, and, some of these things. And I remember that feeling of, man, I can't accomplish some things that my peers can. And so being empathetic and being able to relate to that, but also I still think using yourself and other coaches or people they can relate to, using those examples and say, I was in the same boat when I was 9 years old. I couldn't do this, or you're way further along as a 9-year-old than I was. Really? Yes. And you start telling those stories and be able to really understand. Some days a good hug just helps too.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't need words. Sometimes they just need somebody to be there. I've learned that too. Sometimes just sitting in the gym, you don't have to say anything, but that you're sitting out there with them makes all the difference in the world, because you don't know what's going on in their life, and whatever it is, it could be the worst thing that's happened to them this far. I'll hit you with two more questions I have here, and then we'll kind of let you go on your way. But I think listening to you and some of your other podcasts and some of the stuff I've researched on you, I think these are probably two good ones to end on. But allowing kids, young athletes, to be passionate about what they're doing. It seems like more times than not, an adult, a coach, somebody can steal that passion from them And then before too long, something they loved is something they now hate. Keeping it upbeat, keeping it positive, keeping the kids, even if they're not good at what they're doing, not punishing them for trying to do their best in something they love, not taking that from them. How are you able to do that in your population?
Yeah, that's one thing that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Like I set expectations with my coaches, not only in the weight room environment, but I'm in my youth coaching environment as well. It's like, we're going to be positive. We are dream chasers, man. Like that's what we are. Like give these kids a right to chase a dream, no matter if you think it's big and it's a massive dream that is silly and they could never, ever achieve it. Give them the right to chase it. I want you to promote it. I want you to encourage it and help them fight like hell to get it, man. Like that's important to me. And anybody that is a naysayer or negative towards other people's goals, I have no patience for that. And it doesn't live in our environment. It does not. We are in our iron sharpens iron environment, man. There's no dull blades there. And so we really create that culture in our gym environment. But honestly, like anybody that knows me personally knows my 9-year-old knows how to push my buttons with that coach. He's a little bit of the naysayer and he'll do it about himself, but he also will do it with his older brother. And he gets an earful from me. Everyone deserves the opportunity to dream big. No one rises to low expectations. So give them wind in their sails, whatever they need, and let's get after it. And let's see where the chips fall, man, because there's a lot of things we can't control out of that. But at the same time, we all deserve to be able to dream big and go chase it.
That's an amazing point, and it's something that I've tried to get better with as I've gotten older. I have a thrower in the gym now. He says he's going to throw in the Olympics. I believe him. If he believes it, I believe it. So everything in me has to set him up where everything we do is a path for him to get to the Olympics. I don't know how to get to the Olympics, but if I don't believe it and he don't believe it, we're definitely not getting there. So we have to start there, and then let's see where we end up. And then hopefully in a few years, I'm sitting in the bleachers watching him throw at wherever the Olympics may be.
Amen.
So to kind of wrap this whole thing up, and it's been a wonderful time, but I'll hit you with this last one, and we'll see what you think of it. But the goal is not to teach them to go, but to teach them to stop. So I learned this kind of in softball when we were teaching base running, and I listened to a really good coach tell me this. He's like, don't teach them to go, let them go. And then when you want them to stop, tell them stop, and they'll stop. But if you teach them to stop, you'll never get them to go. Watching your kids in your gym, man, they just go. They're jumping, they're pulling, they're all over the place. Teaching them it's okay to go and letting them go and not trying to hold them back. How important has that been at the young athlete stage? Because it seems like somebody's always there to hold them back. You guys really seem to let them go. When did you stumble on that, and how important has it been?
I think that's a great point, Coach. And I think I think that kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with the whole, like, I, as a coach and really as an athlete, I'm 44 years old. So, again, you and I are probably in the same time frame of like, you got one water break during practices. Like, we're a little old school in some ways. And I like structure. I get anxiety when things are going off the rails. But I learned that a long time ago, it is better to have to pull someone back than always be prodding them. And so when you talk about football players, you're like, man, that guy's got one speed. And you're like, wow, okay, we know what we can do with that guy. So we've taken the same approach. It's like, hey, man, are you going to wear yourself out as a coach in here with a bunch of 7 or 8-year-olds who want to run around? Why not create a game to where that running around can be put to use, right? We can create a game. We can create relay races. We can do all these things where they have to do some movements that are going to be incredibly beneficial. Or do you want to be all grumpy? And I could be that guy, Coach. Or do you want to be grumpy and always barking at everybody the whole time to say, get in line and be single file and all this? Like, they're not coming to the gym to be in school. It's not a library, right? So, hey guys, let's be safe. know what equipment we can do, what we can do with each piece of equipment. We try to teach those things. Let's treat the gym with respect. We don't throw any balls in there because, of course, things get broken. But at the same time, I think that's a great point. Like, let's turn them loose, man, and then let's work on some, deceleration here, pulling them back a little bit. But I love when they come energetic, fired up to be a part of it, and they're hitting on all cylinders. Like, I leave, and usually I'm texting back and forth with the coaches or the dads that were there, and they're like, dude, that was an epic one this morning, man. That was great, and we all got better. We're all smoked from the workout, and we all got to go to work, and they went to school, and everybody's just a little bit better for it.
It kind of dawned on me. I had some high schooler guys, getting ready for football, and it seems like this happens every year, and I've learned to expect it. But the bench press night before the first football game, I mean, you'll walk in there and the music will be blaring and they'll just be amped. You had a program you wanted to run, but they're going. So what do? Do you pull them back? Well, you want them to be as awesome as they can be Friday night. So as long, like you said, as long as we're not killing each other, as long as we're not doing something dangerous, just sit back and enjoy the show. This is what you've worked your butt off, is to get them where they'll just go. And that took a little maturity to see what was going on and how that affected them. But once that light bulb clicked, now, not every night's going to be that, but sometimes you just have to stand back and let the room take care of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's when you think you've created a culture, whether you're a parent, whether you're the coach, where they start leading themselves. They are the captain of their own ship. They know nobody's coming to save them. They're saying, hey, listen, we're taking ownership of this environment today. It's energetic. It's fired up. It's intense. Like all the things we think we've been preaching anyway. Now it's all coming together. And are we going to be grumpy and say, man, I had something to do on a Thursday. I wanted to get this accomplished. Like, man, no, ride the storm, man. Let's go. I tell you, we've shifted gears many a times. And, or I've just said, Steve, get out of the way, man. Like, get out of the way. I know you're a little bit of a control freak, dude. Like, I know you want this thing to go exactly. You have expectations. I've learned to temper my expectations at the end of the day. I think that's part of it, right? Is what expectations creates anxiety. And so I've tempered my expectations for what these mornings or what these workouts are going to look like. And you know what? Everybody's been happier. Everybody's being more productive. And I have just been a better coach, a better dad, a better person in there when I've just changed my expectations to, you know what, guys, as long as we're clocking in and we're getting there, some great things can happen, because I know the program is set up for success. It may not look exactly like I want it to at times, but get out of the way. And it's been fun to watch this thing just take off.
Consistency will override everything. It'll override some of those days that you had to change your plan. If they come in the next workout, well, you're already money ahead. Mm-hmm. They're not required to be there. So sometimes bagging the plan may help in future consistency.
Absolutely.
Well, Coach, I appreciate all your time getting this set up and working through it all. This has been a blast. I didn't know what to expect. I had a few notes, but I didn't need them that much. So I always enjoy a podcast where I don't have to just read through all my notes.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Coach. I appreciate all the hard work and dedication you've put into it, into the product as well. I love listening to some of these other coaches, man, that are doing similar things or completely different things, but they're over there, they're training this population of young people and giving them an opportunity to reach dreams, goals, be successful, and just get a little bit better. It's just really cool that we have access to each other through all these platforms, the internet, all the greatest invention that's ever happened. So just super thankful for you too, man. And I'm honored that you would have me on here.
Well, I appreciate it, Coach, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
You too. Thanks, brother.